What is the worst thing you did as a kid, and still feel guilty about? I bought a car at 15 and when my parents were out, I'd drive to a gas station nearby, get an energy drink, and drive back. I probably went on 20 or so joyrides over that year. They never found out and I never got pulled over, but I still wonder what would have happened had I been caught. Stole a quartz rock from my grandmother. I had one very similar and was convinced it was mine and that I had left it there. She told me it wasn't mine, gave me a hug and a kiss. And, as a 6-year-old, I just fixated that it was mine. And I'm 99% sure it wasn't. Nothing is ever 100%, but yeah. My grandmother, who did nothing but love me and shower me with love, affection, and attention, did not deserve to get her knickknack stolen by me. By the time I was a teenager, it totally ate me up. I never confessed and I wished I had. After she died, I had a dream where she came back to see me and the first thing I did was cry and apologize. I bullied my former friend for about a year. I was trying to fit in but came to my senses eventually and apologized. I'm now on good terms with him and try and help him out whenever I can and sometimes play games online with him, but the guilt still haunts me. Be nice, kids. You'll regret it forever if you don't. When I was 13 and my brother was 16, I was playing around with matches when our parents weren't home, and accidentally started a small fire. Thankfully we put it out quickly, but some damage was done. When our mother came home, she was very angry and asked who did it. I was scared of being buck ragged, common punishment at the time, so I lied and said he did it. He said I did it, but my mom believed me and punished him. I was relieved at first, but I felt really guilty seeing him out in the yard, gagging into a buck rag, from the safety of the house. My siblings and I called the only other kid at our bus stop, Pickle Head, because he always wore a green beanie. We were relentless, too, and teased the fuck out of him. One day he tried wearing a different beanie, red one, and we ramped things up calling him Tomato Head. It's been almost 2 decades and I still don't know what the poor kid's actual name was. We used to play a ball game where you would throw a ball over a car that was driving along the street. I threw the ball but it went through the open back window and hit a baby in the face. I've never run home so fast. I once destroyed a toy my brother had because I was jealous. When I saw the toy online I bought it and gave it to him. He didn't know why I gave him the toy. He called me the next day and said he thinks he finally realized what happened to that toy. When we lived in Nairobi, I used to stuff these giant worms into a tiny hole in the concrete for fun. I must have stuffed dozens of them in there and to top it off, I'd take stick and ram them in for good measure. It was brutal. I felt so guilty. A few years later, I began dreaming about being stuck in small tunnels. I actually became claustrophobic for years after that, to the point where showering was a massive panic-inducing activity. Wrote shit like, I hate you. You're the worst mummy ever and I hope you die. Have a terrible day, etc. all over my birthday card to my mum because she said I couldn't go out to play on my bike before we went out for dinner. She died a month later from a sudden brain aneurysm. 8-year-old me knew it wasn't my fault and I hadn't meant what I'd said in a temper, but I felt bad for wishing it on her all the same and cursed the horrible timing. I feel sad that we never got the chance to talk about it as adults and laugh about it together. In grade school I called the school custodians a whore. She's the sweetest lady and every student consider her a friend. I didn't know what that word mean. I said it out loud during lunch in front of everyone. Kids started to chant. She cried. I got sent to the principal office. I felt so bad seeing a nice lady cry in front of us. I was playing a game of tag with my cousins. My mom said I was being too rough and forced me to sit on the side and watch. I sat with my back against the wall and my legs outstretched. One of cousins was running towards my legs, and when he attempted to dodge them, I raised my knees, tripping him and making him fly through the air. He ended up with a bloody nose and a few stitches. He did nothing wrong. It's still one of the worst things I've done in my life. I thought my babysitter was abusing me, because I read the definition of abuse in my Boy Scout handbook, and I told my teacher. She was in no way abusing me, and I remember quite clearly her tone of voice when I got there after school. I was crushed. How could I have thought this? She's forgiven me since, but every time my mind wanders to the past I still feel horrible about it. I thank whatever deity is out there she didn't lose her job. She is a wonderful person. Maybe just a tad tough on you if you get bad grades. A poor large Irish family on my street gave one of their sons a black Trans Am model car as his only present at Xmas. They told him it was from Knight Rider, his favorite show. It wasn't, but it was a cool model. Not a small one, but a decent-sized effort with opening doors and the like. A good present basically. We, although mainly me, then told him, on Xmas Day, it wasn't Knight Rider. He was really young, like 7, while we were about 12. He got upset and insisted it was Knight Rider. We then told him to prove it. By throwing it, a lot, at the floor, wall etc. Knight Rider was bulletproof so it shouldn't get damaged. In the end the model was scratched, dented, and doors and wheels were either hanging on by a thread or had fallen off. He was dead upset, and his family gave him hell. Always cringe and feel terrible for being a git at the time. I wasn't really a nasty kid, but that was one time I deeply regretted being a bit of a shit just to get giggles from my friends. I was in my grandma's backyard, climbing around on trees in the little play place, and I noticed my grandma's bird box. I still have no idea why, but I decided to kick the box and break it. Never told anyone, and my grandma was really sad about it. I still feel like a dick. When I was in 4th grade, one was pretty socially awkward. So my teacher set me up to go trick-or-treating for Halloween with another socially awkward girl, but everyone always bullied her and I didn't want to be considered uncool, so the day before Halloween I made my dad cancel it. I cringe every time I remember this story. When I was 8 I studiously watched how my dad filled out checks. So, when the moment struck, I stole a check from my parents' checkbook, crossed off their names and wrote mine, wrote it out for $80 to Lego, signed my name, and fired it off in the mail with a order form for a giant Lego semi-complete with Warthog fighter plane. I forgot all about it until a few weeks later it actually showed up. What's astounding is that they not only accepted this totally fraudulent check, but mailed the item off. Of course my parents were furious. My mom found out when the bank called, laughing. So what did she do? She contacted the police and staged things, took me down there and scared the shit out of me. They talked to me about stuff like JV, theft. Then my mom took me to meet the bank manager and I learned about fraud and how it could put me in prison. What's killer is that Lego customer service tried to laugh it off, but they refunded my mom obviously. But holy hell, the worst part was my dad and mom, for the next 4 months, to years, would frisk me in checkout lines. It was pretty extreme, but I'm no thief and I now work in the fraud department at a bank. I didn't invite one of the other neighborhood girls to my birthday slumber party because she had just started wearing a bra and my stupid kid brain thought that would mean she wouldn't want to hang with me and the other 5 girls because we were all still flat-chested. She was crushed and avoided us the rest of the summer and I still feel bad about it 50 years later. I took a dump into any kind of box I could find and I would leave it on the next door neighbor's porch. Shoe boxes, cereal boxes, etc. I did this probably 3 dozen times. I would watch the house next door and make sure the neighbor left. Then I would watch for another 15 minutes to make sure they weren't just faking me out. Then I would sneak up and leave the box. I did actually catch them driving away and then slowly creeping back to park on the street nearby to watch if anyone puts a box on their porch. They even went door to door asking around. Obviously my parents said they doubt it could have been me. I had no reason to do this. It just occurred to me one day that I could do this, so I decided to do it. It wasn't even for a laugh, it was just a mission for me to accomplish. Nobody ever found out. Blamed a babysitter for our apartment getting broken into when it wasn't her fault. I was just upset and wanted to blame someone. I told my mom I saw her leave the door open and my younger brother agreed with me, so my mom fired the sitter. I was under 10 years old. I DK the sitter's name to apologize. Stealing from my parents' wallets. I was very young and I don't think I had yet to understand the value of money yet, as it was somewhat big values. It happened a few times that I took what would be equal to a $50 bill tilde. I have no idea why I did it, but I did stop once I was caught. The only purchase I remember was buying a tabletop game. The cashier asked if I was allowed to use such an amount of money, and right after my purchase my mom did show up as I was struggling with the bag, and I'll never forget the facial expression of the cashier as she starred. I was caught like a day after or something, but I'm pretty sure they must have known for a while. I still feel incredible guilty for this, yet it hurts even more as a grown-up hearing stories how my parents had saved money for a couple years only to be able to buy a garden hose, but had to wait and save for it due to priorities. Wandered away from my dad at the grocery store, went down an aisle by myself, opened a jar of peanut butter, took a scoop with my finger, closed the jar, rejoined my dad like nothing happened. It was very out of character for me. I really think it was just an impulsive test to see if I could actually get away with it. For years I was terrified that I would somehow get found out by the store, cops, peanut butter god's deadpan face. In middle school, my friends and I cut the heads off of a bouquet of roses that our Spanish teacher's husband had delivered for her. She had stepped out TLFOR a second before class and we just destroyed the whole bouquet. She had an absolute breakdown over it. I'm a teacher now. And, I'd like to think, a better person. What we did was just stupid and mean. I also feel bad for how we all treated Mr. Pitts. He was an okay guy and we bullied the crap out of him. I hope my students never treat me the way we treated some of our teachers. I was only 6 or so and I had hit a frog with a stick hoping to stun and catch it. It died. I have a mentally ill family member and as a kid I could never make sense of it or why my parents weren't doing more. It was difficult to deal with and I remember one day when I was like 7/8 of a year old I blamed my mom for it, raised my voice at her and everything. Almost 15 years down the line I still feel very guilty about it. I don't remember exactly what I said but I can very clearly remember the look on my mom's face. When I was in 2nd grade, we had a class guinea pig named Spark. I was holding him and he bit me hard enough to draw blood. I didn't drop him or yell when he bit me, but it made me mad. I looked around, saw that no one was looking and then screamed and threw him. No one questioned it because they saw the bite mark and assumed I panicked, but it was definitely intentional. Spark ended up with a broken leg, sad face. Made fun of a overweight friend of mine. She were already suffering from bullies and I, the friend she trusted, took the last shot and made her really upset. She never came back to children's park we played in and I never thought about the damage I'd done until it's too late. We moved away. Just clarifying since it sounds like she suicided. I had a spy book that taught you how to make traps. I dug a hole, covered it with leaves, caught a meter reader. Set up a tripwire for my aunt. It also worked. I was like a one-child guerrilla warrior, asshole. Didn't think child me got actually hurt people. It's small and stupid but measured by guilt the worst happened when I was like 8. So in like the early 2000s. My older cousin, who was babysitting me, made me mad by making me follow the rules. No soda before dinner. So I went outside and was sitting in the grass looking for 4-leaf clovers. He came out and asked what I was doing, trying to reconcile with me despite the fact that I was being a little shit. Me. Looking for 4-leaf clovers. Him. Jokingly. Well, just look for the greenest one. You may have more luck over where the dogs pee me. Maybe I should check your hair, it looks like no one told you it was green even though you're color blind. My cousin, who at 16 was already 6'2", wore all black most of the time to get around his colorblindness and in general leaned into the goth look. He's always been a big fan of ICP for reference. However, he had decided to bleach his hair a few days earlier and it had left his hair this bleach green color that I knew he was self-conscious about. He was literally babysitting me so my mom would give him a few bucks to buy a toner for it. For a half a second, while I scowled at him from the grass, a flash of hurt, then anger, then sadness went over his face. He said, "Good luck then," and went back inside. Guilt washed over me. I instantly felt like human trash and when I did find a 4-leaf clover some 30 minutes later I gave it to him and apologized. He gave me a very minor scolding about teasing people over things they couldn't control, his colorblindness, and then accepted the 4-leaf clover and gave me a hug. A few days later he showed back up to the house with his hair recolored. Instead of dyeing it black or toning it blonde, he leaned into the green and his hair was now nuclear green. I can honestly say it was a formative experience for me and led to me being the chaotic good individual I am these days. It definitely shaped how I deal with my nieces and nephews. I used to hang out with my neighbor's kid a lot growing up. He was extremely spoiled and always had the newest games, so I would go over there and spend hours playing games at his house. However, with privilege came a lot of shitty behavior and he was quite the dick at times. To give an example, sometimes he would just make me and other kids in the neighborhood sit and watch him play games or even hit or throw the controller at us when he lost. Whenever he would start to play games by himself, I would go snoop around his house since his parents would be gone most of the day. I found a drawer where they would always have a fat stack of $100 bills laying around. I began with just taking one bill every week or so. This went on for a month or two and I ended up stealing at least $10,000 worth of cash. I don't think they ever noticed, but looking back now, I did it in a sort of vengeance towards the kid when the parents were nothing but nice to me. I'd like to one day leave an envelope at the doorstep repaying them even though it went unnoticed. I was pretty awful. As a child, I used to be the self-anointed boss of the games we'd play during breaks, recess. I would decide who could play and who couldn't. Sometimes I wouldn't let kids play based on my mood or because they said something that upset me. Now I think about them, sitting on the bench watching the other kids play and just wanting to be part of the group. I feel so bad. Thankfully, I grew up with these kids and I changed a lot. I apologized and I am friends with most of them today. Smiley face. I once threw a rock at a pigeon. I didn't mean to hit him. I just wanted to see him fly off. He was pretty. I hit the pigeon. I still feel bad about that. My friend and I discovered that a lighter and spray paint creates a flamethrower. Anyway, I accidentally burned the side of my friend's face. He's recovered just fine, but I'll never forget how loud my dad yelled at me when his mom came knocking on the door. I stole from a friend of mine. A while back, Burger King had a line of toys with its meals and one of the toys was a wallet. I do not remember what the branding was, but I remember it being really cool. So one day I'm visiting a friend of mine and I see in his room that he has the wallet. I was insanely jealous, so when he wasn't looking I took everything out of it, hid the contents around his room, and pocketed the wallet. I then spent the rest of the day hanging out and playing, and at the end of the day left with my new prize. I once broke one of my friend's heads open when we were having a rock fight. His crying still kinda haunts me. I shot a bird when I was 5. My mom forced me to watch it die. That had a lasting impression and I became a huge animal lover. When I was like 10 or 11, I cut one of those rubber bands so it was one long piece. I stuck drawing pins, thumbtacks, through it and used it to hit people. I do feel quite bad about it. Bit of a dick move, really. Thanks for watching. See you later.